Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the May 11th, 2023 City of Roseville Planning Commission meeting. Please put all electronic devices on silent at this time. Agendas are available at the end of the staff table. If you plan to speak at tonight's meeting, please complete a blue speaker card, similar to what these are right here, and return it to the staff table. As a reminder, Planning Commission meetings are broadcast live and replayed throughout the week on Consolidated Communications and Comcast. I will now call the meeting to order. Angela, may I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Brashears, absent excused. Commissioner Jensen.
Here.
Commissioner Hagen-Jost.
Here.
Commissioner Pryor.
Here.
Commissioner Randolph.
Here.
Vice Chair Covington. Here. Chair Martin.
Here. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Pryor, could you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Angela, can we please have the staff introductions?
Good evening, Commissioners. Chair Martin. My name is Angela Grant, Recording Secretary.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Speaker, Assistant City Attorney. Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. Greg Bitter, Planning Manager.
Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. Derek Ogden, Senior Planner.
Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. Scarlett Marr, Associate Planner.
And good evening, Commissioners. Matt Todd, Principal Engineer.
Great, thank you. Next up on the agenda is the public comment. This is a period of time when anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda, when addressing the commission, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda?
I would. Hi. My name's Kimberly Shannon. I'm a resident of West Roseville. This is not on the agenda, but I would like to give you an update as far as our petition is coming along to stop the Roseville Industrial Park in West Park on Phillips Road. I do have some information for you here. So we in West Roseville really oppose the rezoning of the land of Phillips Road from what it is now to a planned development to an industrial park per Panettone for them to come in and develop whatever type of industrial park they want to develop there. The reason why is because Blue Oaks would be the only route to 65. On Blue Oaks, you pass 3 schools. One school is directly on, one school indirectly on Blue Oaks, which is a high school, 3 parks, and 2 senior communities. Once Westbrook opens up to Baseline, that's going to be the only way to get to the Baseline to 99 for these trucks. There you have 5 schools. We have 7 neighborhood parks, 1 proposed soccer park directly on Westbrook with 10 soccer fields, and 2 senior communities. One technically not really a senior community, but my neighborhood has a lot of seniors in it. So we really urge the Planning Commission to please think about the zoning of this area when you're thinking about the citizens of Roseville in that area. We have a map of the plan. Here are homes, and this is the industrial park. You guys have seen this before from Panettone, I'm sure. We have 1,348 signatures now on a petition to stop the industrial park rezoning. I have here a packet for you with comments from everybody that signed, that gave a comment, as well as all the signatures from 1,347 people. So I would like to present this to you guys, if you would like to take it, so you can look it over and look at the comments, and please consider the rezoning of that parcel of land from what it's used for now to an industrial park, which we do not want that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can just hand it to
staff. Is there anybody else who'd like to talk about this point as well? Show of hands or is, okay. Yeah, come on up, yeah.
Turn this in out of
If you just, shuffle it up.
No problem. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Irma Ratliff, and I am a resident of West Roseville as well, and have many concerns about the Roseville Industrial Park, and will mention just a few. We have an industrial corridor that has much empty space. There are sites willing to build to suit, buildings that already have docks, just waiting for someone to buy, lease, etc. We need to prevent blight from filtering into our community by working hard to infill and heavily market what we already have. I disagree with the 1% availability for industry that is stated on Roseville's website. I have found 197 acres of current vacant land in the incorporated city of Roseville that has all existing infrastructure, meaning roadways, wet-dry utilities that are planned. We have a minimum of 400,000 square feet of empty buildings waiting to be used. I know others have found more. I just ran out of time looking. We have fire stations and police beats set up for these areas and don't have to purchase million-dollar fire trucks and related equipment. We do not need to bring problems into our great city by not using the currently zoned and available industrial area correctly, where roads are made to take the weight of endless semi-trucks, unlike Blue Oaks Boulevard that is not. The proposed site has nothing that an industrial center should have near it. It goes against the 2035 plan for Roseville that states it needs access close to freeways, etc. There are no services for truckers to sleep, eat, get a hotel, etc. The site is right next to Johnson Wildlife Preserve. This needs to be protected, and an industrial center certainly will chase out or kill our wildlife and plant species. The California Air Resource Board manual states on page 42 that an industrial plant is not compatible with a residential area. It goes on to say that any distribution center should be a minimum of 1,000 feet away from any residential area based on just 100 trucks entering it a day or 40 refrigerated trucks a day for the air quality. No entry or exit area should go into any residential areas, page 11. You can expand upon that and realize that with more trucks, the greater the distance should be from residents. Another site did quote 2 miles if you are expecting 1,140 trucks a day to be entering in through this residential area. This board also states on page E1 that a minimum of 500 feet is needed from the closest traffic lane of a traffic corridor if the trucks plan on passing by a school. We have Cooley Middle School that sits right on the edge of Blue Oaks Boulevard. The effects of asthma and industrial parks on children are well documented. USC did a study that found in Wayne County, Michigan, 20% of children had asthma that lived next to an industrial center. On CDC's website, it is 5% of children have asthma in the United States.
Hey, Irma, I'm going to stop you for a second. Your time has ran out from the 3 minutes.
Okay.
I understand you have a lot of
I just
things
have
to say.
2 sentences left.
Okay,
Is that
sure.
okay? The health of us is all premier in this community. People moved here for quality of life, and placing this industrial center at this location is wrong in all aspects. We need to keep our children safe and healthy. They are our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Irma. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this topic specifically? Before I ask for any other things, I just want to hand it over to Greg just for some comments on this specific item.
Chair Martin, I'd like to give the commission a quick update on the status of the Roseville Industrial Park project. So in April 21st was the end of the public comment period for the draft environmental impact report. And just prior to that, we had a very well-attended community meeting. The result of the community meeting, the comments that we've received on the draft EIR, Panattoni Development Corporation, the applicants for the Roseville Industrial Park, they have determined that they're going to put the project on pause. They're going out to do an extended round of public outreach. They're currently scheduling meetings with various neighborhood groups to talk about the project, what ultimately should be developed on that site. So there's nothing set in stone at this point. They're trying to be very open and listen to what the residents want to say. They're trying to have smaller meetings than 200 people at a time, so they can actually have good opportunities to listen and conversations. So while they're doing that, and they've indicated to us that that's probably going to last at least through the end of the summer, so probably 2-3 more months at least, the city has put our processing of the application on pause. So we're really not actively working on the project. We're not going to start responding to the comments from the draft environmental impact report. We're not doing any more analysis that's necessary. because we need to wait and see what the outcome is. Panattoni has indicated that at the outcome of their smaller outreach, they're going to host another larger meeting to talk about the results and talk about some potential options for the property. Once that occurs, we're going to have to reassess the project. It's possible that if there's significant enough changes, additional analysis would have to occur, possible recirculation of the draft DIR. So we might be back at the beginning. We just don't know at this time. So we are kind of in a pause mode right now for probably at least 2 to 3 months. I think it's just important for the public to know that this project won't be coming before the Planning Commission anytime soon. I think it's also important to let the folks know as they give us information, we're collecting that information. All the information we receive ultimately will be brought before the decision-making bodies, the Planning Commission and City Council. Because the item isn't before you tonight, it's really not appropriate to hand that out. But we'll, trust me, we have the copies. We'll make sure that it's part of the public record that you'll end up receiving.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bitter. Yeah.
Could I just make one comment, just for the purpose of the public? Because I've been approached by lots of people who want to discuss this. And I just want people to know there has been nothing provided to us at this point for any type of evaluation or decision that doesn't happen until you're ready to prepare,
Right.
to present something to us. And so I just want the public to know that those of us that sit on this commission, we follow the process, and when something's put in front of us for a decision, we evaluate it and make a decision.
And it's my responsibility, my staff's responsibility to make sure that as we gather all the information, that all the planning commissioners have all the information available at the appropriate time as we're getting closer to any potential hearings. And again, at this point, I couldn't tell you when this could potentially come before the Planning Commission, because we really are starting from, I don't want to say starting from scratch, but we've taken several steps backwards, and the applicant has taken several steps backwards to reevaluate what they're doing on the property.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Greg, if I could just tag along to what Commissioner Hagan just said, and I'd look to City Attorney for the answer to this question as well. For a planning commissioner to step out at this point and make any kind of comments regarding the project would be extremely problematic on the commissioner's ability to weigh in when the project came before us. In fact, it may eliminate that commissioner's ability to vote on the project. So it's very important for us to stay at arm's length from this process until the information is complete and we have a chance to look at that.
That's absolutely correct, yeah. Given what information, what actions, it could conflict you out of that ultimate decision at the end. And so that's the importance which Greg identified in keeping the information as part of the record, but providing it at the appropriate time so that exact scenario doesn't occur.
I just want that clear to the public, because we are very interested in what happens in the community. We want to make sure we're doing the best we can for the city as a whole. We don't want to prejudice the decision that could lead us not to be able to participate in that when it's time to do that.
Correct.
Great. Thank you for all the input. I hope that helps raise. Would you like to state another?
Small comment.
Come on up to the mic, please, and just state your name again, please, first.
So what I gave you was not
If
meant
you could state
to-
your name first, please.
Sorry,
again,
Kimberly Shannon, West Roseville. What I gave you is just strictly informative. We're trying to make sure that the city knows what we're doing, what kind of campaigns we're running, what kind of information you might need from us, the commentary from us in writing, so that way you have a better informed knowledge of our neighborhood, what we think, what we feel, how we reacted to this. And I understand that the large meeting was really wild and it was kind of crazy, and I was one of the speakers there too. But I'm also one of the small talk hosts for Panattoni when they do decide to contact me and get that going, along with a few other of the people that are really active in this. So, I love Roseville. I moved here from Mission Viejo, where I grew up as a planned community, master planned community, in a beautiful community. I came here and it looked just like Mission Viejo, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. The reason why we moved from Mission Viejo was because of the overdevelopment of Irvine from Panattoni. and the Irvine Company. The traffic on the 405, the 16 lanes on the 405 freeway, we would live 15 miles away from work. It took us an hour to get there. So I just don't want Roseville to have that same kind of feeling as South Orange County, where it's just overpopulated, over-trafficked. It's just a mess down there. I hate going down there now. I love Roseville, and I don't want it to change so much that we become like that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we appreciate all the information. And like we've all said, when it comes to us, we'll be able to look into it more further. But obviously, it's being pushed back into development stages. Thank you. Okay, is there any other comments? Please come up, and if you could fill out a blue card and then state your name. Is this regarding the industrial park? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jesus Arechiga. I'm a neighbor of Winder Creek. Been here before, and I have a question for Joe Speaker regarding, or attorney, regarding our public servants. How obligated are they from refraining from accessing public information? Because this is all available for the public, and we're all residents of the city. Can you clarify, because I keep hearing we cannot look at that, we cannot look at that. Can you clarify the legality of that?
Yeah, and so just for the record, the public comment isn't really meant to be a dialogue system, but I'm happy to engage with you and provide whatever information you need. But it's not really meant to be a Q&A session, but I'm happy to answer that. So kind of what was identified before, from a legal standpoint, the commission has to consider the information that's provided to them in the record as part of the appropriate decision-making at the appropriate time. So providing information outside of that can jeopardize that. So it's not that they're precluded from getting information, it's that they have to consider their information in the record. And so that's what has to be established, is that record. And then that record is put forward at the appropriate time. And so, just to be clear, that all the commissioners are informed, but the commissioners have to be informed with accurate information from the record at the appropriate time, so that then they're not, so that they can remain impartial in making the ultimate decision that has to be made when that time occurs, whenever that time occurs.
Right, and just to clarify, approaching the commissioners on an individual basis could jeopardize their vote. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions during this time period of any other items not specifically on the agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public comment period. Next up on the agenda is the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of routine items that may be approved under one motion as recommended in the staff report. However, each item may be considered separately upon a request by the audience, planning commission, or staff. Tonight's consent calendar consists of one item. It's item 5.1, the minutes from the March 23rd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Is there anyone on the commission or in the audience who would like to pull this item off of the consent calendar for separate discussion? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as listed?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have Commissioner Pryor has made the motion, and Commissioner Randolph has seconded. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Pryor.
Yes.
Vice Chair Covington.
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yes.
Commissioner Hagenjos.
Yes.
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes, the motion is approved. Next up on the agenda is the requests and presentations. Before we begin, I want to review the meeting procedures. We will hear the staff presentation, then I will take questions from the commission, then I will open up the public hearing. The applicant will make a presentation, then I will open the public comment, and the public will have an opportunity to speak. Then I will close public comment, and if needed, the applicant may be given an opportunity to provide a rebuttal. Then I will close the public hearing. Then the commission may ask questions of staff. And then finally, the commission will consider the items and make a decision based upon the information provided in the report from staff and the testimony presented during tonight's hearing. First item on the agenda is item 6.1. It's a request for a one-year extension to a previously approved conditional use permit and design review permit, file numbers PL19-0350 for 5750 Baseline Road. For the record, file number PL23-0027. Scarlett, may we have your presentation, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. The first item for your consideration this evening is the Baseline Self-Storage Extension Project. So the project site is located within the Sierra Vista specific plan, and it's bordered by existing and future single-family dwelling units to the north and east, as well as vacant properties which are slated for commercial development to the west. The site has a land use designation of community commercial and a zoning designation of community commercial with a special area overlay. For some background information, in 2021, the Planning Commission adopted the baseline storage initial study negative declaration and approved the conditional use permit and a design review permit to allow the construction of an approximately 230,000 square foot self-storage facility. Because the project has not been constructed and the entitlements were set to expire earlier this year, the applicant did submit an application for a 1-year time extension to give them more time to be able to pull the building permits as well as their improvement plans. So because the application is for an extension of time, no changes in the project design, as well as any changes to the hours of operation are proposed. So the project continues to be consistent with the previously approved development, and as such, the original approved conditions of approval will continue to remain. So the proposed project, which is the time extension, is substantially consistent with the previously approved project and will not result in any new environmental impacts, and therefore no further environmental review is required. Early notification of the time extension was posted on the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhoods Association's website, and a notice of intent to approve the project, the time extension was mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project site. So as a result of that notice of intent, we did receive one public hearing in response by a resident nearby. So the following slide does provide a summary of the residents' concern regarding the time extension. So as explained in the staff report, in 2021, the Planning Commission considered the self-storage facility, the project, and found it to be compatible with the adjacent land uses. In addition, the Planning Commission also considered the traffic impacts associated with the project. So a self-storage facility is one of the lowest traffic generated uses and will actually have less traffic than any commercial retail should it occupy the site. The resident also raised a concern regarding noise. So noise is not an issue for the facility as consideration to the adjacent land uses was done and analyzed previously and approved in 2021. Lastly, the resident raised a concern regarding light pollution and crime. As previously mentioned, in 2021, light was analyzed and found that it be consistent with the community design guidelines, and conditions of approval would ensure that any glare into the adjacent residents would not occur. So in conclusion, staff finds that the time extension continues to be consistent with the zoning ordinance, the general plan, as well as the Sierra Vista specific plan and the community design guidelines, and the site is properly designed and will not be detrimental to the public health and safety and the public welfare, and the required findings of fact can be made for the project. So based on the information presented to you this evening and the evaluation in the staff report, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission take the action as listed on the slide. This concludes my presentation, but I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scarlett. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff at this time? Nope. I will now open the public hearing. So I'd like to invite the project representative for this item to address the commission.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Craig Myers. Craig Myers and George Scott Architects. We're local here in Roseville, and I am the applicant for this extension. We are also the architects of record for this project. To give you a quick summary, the civil engineers and landscape documents were resubmitted for round 3 on the plan check comments, and we are due for the architectural side, building side, within a couple weeks to resubmit for our round number 1. I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and I'll step aside, but to let you know here, representative of the ownership team is here, and if you have questions for any one of us, we will come back and respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Commissioners, are there any questions for the project representative at this time? No. Thank you. I will now open the public comment period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this time for this project? Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public comment period. And during that time, Commissioners, are there any other questions that might have come up for the applicant or for staff? Any new questions? No? Thank you. Okay, I will now close the public hearing. And would anybody like to make a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the two findings of fact and approve the extension to a conditional use permit and design review permit subject to 3 conditions of approval. That's for the extension to a conditional use permit and design review permit at 5750 Baseline Road, a baseline self-storage extension. That's for the record file number PL23-0027.
Second.
Okay, great. We have Commissioner Pryor has made the motion and Commissioner Covington has made the second motion. Can we get a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Covington? Yes. Commissioner Jensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor?
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagenjost?
Yes.
Chair Martin?
Yes, the motion is approved. There's a 10-day appeal period for this item. So before we start item 6.2, for the record, I'm recusing myself from item 6.2 due to a financial conflict of interest related to my employment. And I'll hand it off to the Vice Chair.
Item 6.2 is a request to adopt the Quick Quack Car Wash Initial Study Mitigated Negative Declaration and Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program and approve a conditional use permit and design review permit for 1590 Vineyard Road. For the record, file number PL22-0272. Ms. Scarlett, may we have your presentation, please?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. The second item for your consideration this evening is the Quick Quack Car Wash project. The project site is located at the northwest corner of Vineyard Road and Opportunity Drive in the city's infill area. The site has a land use designation of community commercial and a zoning designation of planned development. Surrounding uses include commercial and office buildings to the north, single-family dwelling units and a commercial business to the east across Opportunity Drive, professional industrial uses to the south across Vineyard Road, and an existing gasoline station with a convenience store and a car wash facility to the west. The project includes a conditional use permit and design review permit for the development of approximately 3,000 square foot automatic car wash facility with 23 vacuums and on-site improvements as well. Car wash facilities are considered conditionally permitted in the community commercial zone, and the CUP process allows the Planning Commission to evaluate the compatibility of the car wash with other surrounding land uses and allows the Commission to place operational conditions on the project to mitigate any potential impacts. So as part of the review process, an environmental noise assessment was completed for the project, and a summary of that study is included in your staff report. But in short, the noise study found that based on the total combined noise levels, the project will be within the city's maximum noise levels. As the proposed project is not anticipated to exceed noise standards, no mitigation measures are recommended. However, the project will include a condition of approval to limit the hours of operation from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. through 8:30 p.m. on weekends and holidays. Access into the site will be provided via 2 existing driveways, one entrance off of Vineyard Road and the second off of Opportunity Drive. 3 stacking lanes of approximately 200 feet is proposed on the north side of the car wash facility. This does exceed the minimum requirement of 100 feet. The car wash users will enter the tunnel through the west end and exit on the east side, and all the air dryers located north of the car wash facility, internal to the site, will not be visible from Vineyard Road. So similar to the surrounding buildings, the project does incorporate a similar color palette, consistent with the center and the office buildings to the north, and consistent with the community design guidelines. The proposed automatic car wash facility will incorporate a variation in roof line as well as architectural treatments and colors and materials consistent with the community design guidelines. The stone that is used around the base of the building and as well as used on the columns will frame the car wash building towers. And the car wash building on the southern elevation will be further defined through the faux windows as well as metal canopies over those windows. Overall, the project is consistent with the community design guidelines and other facilities within the city. An initial study leading to a mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. The initial study found that the project could have significant impacts related to tribal cultural resources, but would be reduced to less than significant levels with mitigation measures. A copy of the Mitigation Monitoring Reporting Program is included in your staff report as Exhibit A. And lastly, the initial study was available for a 20-day public review period where no comments on the adequacy of the document were received. Early notification of the project was posted on the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhoods Associations website, and the applicant did held 2 virtual public informational meetings where both staff and the applicant's team were present, and of those 2 meetings, only 1 resident attended the meeting. The resident did have questions regarding the site design as well as questions regarding noise, but ultimately the resident in attendance did not express any opposition to the project. The public hearing for tonight's meeting was published in the Press Tribune, as well as mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project site and posted on the Arcona website. To date, no public comments have been received. So in conclusion, staff finds that the project is consistent with the zoning ordinance, the general plan, and the community design guidelines, and the site is properly designed and will not be detrimental to the public health and safety and the welfare of the community, and the required findings of fact can be made for the project. Based on the information presented to you this evening, as well as the evaluation in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission take the actions as listed on the screen. This concludes my presentation, but I am available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. Are there any questions for staff? Okay. I will now open the public hearing. I would like to invite the project representative for this item to address the commission.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Vance Shannon, and I represent Quick Quack Car Wash very proudly. Just a little bit about Quick Quack. We started in 2004. 2 of the founding members actually operated the store. And fast forward to 2023, we have 190 stores throughout the western United States. We have 900,000 members for our membership, and we have approximately 4,600 members per every store that we open new. Water conservation is always very important. We filter all of our water and we recycle all of our water, using far less water that you would use in your driveway, for example. And then the water we do use, it all goes into the sewer system. When you wash your car in your driveway, that water goes into the stormwater system. So for the reason of water savings and where that water goes is very important. Less than 3 minutes to get through the wash, so it's very convenient. It's guaranteed clean. You can go through as many times as you want to if your car is not clean. As Ms. Marr presented, we are consistent with the general plan and the applicable standards. And that's really all I have to present, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you. Any questions for the project representative? Okay. I will now open the public comment period. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. And any last questions from the commission for staff or applicant? Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the Quick Quack Car Wash Initial Study Mitigated Negative Declaration and Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, adopt the 3 findings of fact and approve the conditional use permit subject to the 2 conditions of approval, and adopt the 4 findings of fact and approve the design review permit subject to 66 conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Commissioner Jensen has made the motion and Commissioner Pryor has seconded the motion. Angela, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hagenjost?
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor?
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph?
Yes.
Commissioner Jensen?
Yes.
Vice Chair Covington?
Yes. The motion is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period for this item.
Thank you very much. We're excited to be another member of the community.
right, thank you for covering, Chair Covington. Next item is item 6.3. It is a request for a design review permit and tentative parcel map for 1751 Pleasant Grove Boulevard, for the record, file number PL 22-205. Sean, may we have your presentation, please?
Yes, you may. Good evening, Chair Martin and Commissioners. My name is Sean Morales. I'm an associate planner. I'm here to present to you the Grocery Outlet Project. The project site is located at 1751 Pleasant Grove Boulevard and is parcel WW40 in the North Roseville specific plan. The site is approximately 3.1 acres in size and has a zoning and general plan land use designation of community commercial. It is surrounded by the Paseo del Norte subdivision to the east, a wetland preserve to the south, a CVS pharmacy to the west, and an undeveloped commercial parcel to the north across Pleasant Grove Boulevard. This slide provides a little background on the development of this area around the project. In 1997, the City Council adopted the North Roseville specific plan, which included the project site outlined in red as part of parcel WW40, planned for community commercial, and it has retained that designation since that time. In 2006, parcel WW41 to the east was rezoned from commercial to high-density residential for the Paseo del Norte development of 125 attached row homes. Some of the row homes were constructed, but the development largely stalled with the 2008 recession. The CVS pharmacy was approved on the western portion of parcel WW40 in 2010. And in 2013, the Paseo del Norte project was modified to reduce the total units to 99 and change the design from attached to detached homes on slightly larger lots, though the overall development layout was largely consistent, as you can see in the comparison of the two plans. The current request is for a design review permit and tentative parcel map for the construction of a 16,000 square foot grocery building and a 4,600 square foot shops building on the undeveloped eastern portion of parcel WW40. The grocery and the shops buildings on parcels 1 and 2 will be developed in one phase. Parcel 3 will be developed at a later time and is not a part of this project. The buildings are set back from Pleasant Grove with parking areas in front, and there is a surplus of 39 parking spaces by code within the center. There are 3 driveways that serve the site, and a traffic study was completed to evaluate access and circulation. Based on the study and staff review, the applicant is required to add striping to driveway 1, as shown, in order to facilitate safe travel from Fittement Road for customers and residents. A gull wing is also provided or required on Pleasant Grove in order to eliminate left turns out of driveway 3. However, the left turn lane on Pleasant Grove is in front of the site is required to be lengthened in order to accommodate additional cars that will now be leaving driveway 2 and making a U-turn there to travel west on Pleasant Grove. A speed bump is required to be constructed on the eastern boundary adjacent to Camino Real Way to help deter commercial customers from using that private HOA road for ingress and egress. Signage is also required to alert customers it is a private road. Consistent with the community design guidelines, a 6-foot masonry wall is required along the eastern boundary of near the shops building to provide a visual and noise buffer for neighboring residents. And a wall is also required by staff along the loading dock at the rear of the grocery building for additional visual and noise buffering. Also consistent with the design guidelines, the grocery and shops building elevations consider and complement the materials of each other as well as the adjacent CVS building, including stucco walls, red awnings, a stacked stone base, and similar cornice features. The buildings provide varying roof heights and wall plane variation through articulated columns and building projections. Green screens are proposed on the shops building's east elevation facing the residents. The applicant and staff held 2 neighborhood meetings for this project on February 13th and March 2nd. In February, approximately 40 people were in attendance, and the majority of the discussion was about project ingress and egress, including concerns related to customers of the project traveling down Camino Real Way, the proximity of the project to the residents, the desire for a barrier between the commercial and residential parcels, and the elimination of the left turn when leaving the project site onto Pleasant Grove. It was decided at that time that a follow-up meeting was required to gather additional research and to have additional staff there. So at the March meeting, approximately 25 people were in attendance. City staff answered questions related to traffic and access between the 2 parcels. In the time between those 2 meetings, it was discovered that there is an access easement that allows residents of Paseo del Norte to use the commercial parcel for ingress and egress, but does not allow access for commercial customers onto the private road. Much of the discussion at the meeting concerned how to enforce this easement. Ultimately, the easement must be enforced by the HOA. Options for this were discussed, such as installing a gate or bollards between the two properties, which would also need to be paid for by the HOA residents if they desired. A solid wall across the road is not an option because there is also an emergency vehicle access easement out of the development. In response to these concerns, the previously mentioned signage and speed bump deterrents were made conditions of approval for the project. A third shorter meeting was held with the HOA president to discuss remaining concerns as well as the process moving forward with the project. Staff also created a section on the Planning Division website with information about the development. And a notice of the Planning Commission hearing was sent to property owners within 300 feet of the project, as well as a list of interested individuals, and posted in the Roseville Press Tribune. In response to the notice, staff received one public comment email that was included in the staff report, as well as a response. However, two additional responses were received this afternoon that could not be incorporated into the report, obviously, or the presentation, but they have been printed for this meeting and made available to you there. The email that is in the staff report stated that the adjacent residents have a prescriptive easement on the semicircle paved area seen here in red for parking use. This area was paved as a temporary emergency vehicle turnaround, and there is a temporary easement recorded on it for that use that expires when the site is developed. The question of prescriptive easement is a civil matter between the adjacent property owners. However, it should be noted that Civil Code Section 1007 states no person can gain any prescriptive easement against a public entity on public lands or private lands with a public easement, such as this easement for emergency vehicles. The email also stated there is insufficient parking at the Paseo del Norte development. However, each unit in the development includes 2 garage spaces, which is the zoning ordinance requirement, and there is 69 additional on-street parking spaces, which are surplus. The project is exempt from CEQA as an infill development project that meets these 5 criteria listed here, including that it is consistent with the community commercial designation, is on a site less than 5 acres in size, is previously graded and has no value as habitat for endangered species, would not result in significant traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality effects, and can be served by all utilities and public services necessary. So in conclusion, staff finds the project complies with the zoning ordinance, general plan, North Roseville specific plan, and the community design guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends the commission adopt the required findings of fact and approve the 2 entitlements as listed, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Sean. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff at this time? Nope. Okay, I will now open the public hearing. So I'd like to invite the project representative for this item to address the commission.
All right. Hello and good evening, Planning Commission members. I'm Elaine Leong from Noor Architects, here on behalf of Paul Bollinger, the owner-developer for this property. The owner has also developed the fountains down in Roseville, and he's continuing to invest in the city of Roseville, creating and maintaining these places to serve the community. We've been working on these buildings to provide a grocery store and supporting shops, building for the community. The look of the building has been considered and designed to fit in and be compatible with the existing CBS building, with the veneer and complementary color palette and canopies as architectural features. The loading dock was carefully placed away from the neighborhood and screened. Trash enclosures were also designed with the same aesthetics and are secured. The operator for the grocery outlet is local and family-owned. Grocery outlet offers organics and natural food, as well as great beer and wine selection with quality and affordable prices. Shops buildings have been designed to provide space up to 3 new businesses to serve the community. The owner has taken measures to address some of the concerns that have been brought up in the previous planning meetings. And willing to take action on some of the issues where he can, adding signage to highlight the access not allowed through the through into the neighborhood and adding a speed bump, as well as changing the wall that's between the building and the neighborhood based on the neighborhood feedback that was received. With this, we hope that we have your support to bring this project to fruition. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm here if any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the representative this time? No? Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Are you with?
I am with Grocery Outlet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I am the tenant that is seeking to hopefully come to this location, and we're very excited. We've been working with the developer. We also attended the community meetings where we wanted, and I think the developer did a really good job in addressing the concerns. So we're pleased about that. But we're also pleased to be part of the community. The owner of the store will be a local person who will be integrated, if they are already, in the community. And we usually are very proud of serving and networking and helping nonprofits that we connect with within the community. If you have any questions of operations or anything like that, we are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for the additional insight. Any questions?
I do have a question for the applicant, if
Sure.
it's possible. Are you're the architect and are the applicant also, or?
Yes.
Okay. The other 3 commercial units, do they have any tenants lined up or any?
There's no potential tenants at this time.
No potential tenants. I'm wondering if I could ask a question of the city, if that's possible. What possible tenants or what uses are allowed in community commercial developments?
Oh, it's a pretty wide-ranging use table in the zoning ordinance. So there's, retail, I don't know,
typical
personal services, restaurants. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you'd have a whole host of commercial type of uses that could locate in there. Anything from personal services such as a nail salon, dry cleaners, to convenience restaurants like a ice cream shop, sandwich shop, retail uses, a UPS store, things like that are kind of the typical uses that would go in to tenant spaces about that size.
And would they have to apply for permission under?
So no, not necessarily. They would have to apply for a tenant improvement through the building department, and the planning department reviews that building permit application during that review process. So we would make sure it's consistent with the zoning as well as the parking and other types of things like that.
The new Rayleigh's One Center at Fitment and Blue Oaks is community commercial, so that has a representative amount of uses. Most of our small and medium-sized commercial centers, where you find a grocery store, are community commercial uses. So that those typical uses that you'd find in any community shopping center.
Okay, great, thank you.
Greg, can I ask a follow-up question? So even though the uses can come in through a TI process, planning staff evaluates the uses based on parking as well, which could limit what could go into those locations. Even though the zoning would allow it, the parking may not allow it to happen because of the amount that's available.
That is correct, and that does occur in some instances where we look at that, and they would either not be able to go in, or they would have to apply for a parking reduction and go through an entitlement process for that. This center, I believe, is overparked. I mean, it's overparked per the code, so they probably have a pretty wide range of allowable uses that could go in there.
Can I ask one more follow-up question? So parcel 3, I know there's a lot of discussion about that parcel, and it's shown in the traffic study as being a fast food drive-through, but in the staff report it says it's not part of the project. So that project, though, when it comes forward, would be a separate action that would be taken by the Planning Commission to review its complete impacts, separate from the parcel 2 that's there, correct?
Yes. Okay. So if I may, that goes hand in hand with the letter from the law offices of Donald Mooney, and also the response that we prepared for that letter, and that letter alleges that we are improperly using an infill exemption for this project. But if you read the letter, it's all predicated on the fact that, and it's the author must have only read the noise study and the traffic study. The original application included a fast food drive-through use. We evaluated that. In our initial evaluation, we just could not figure out how to make it work. And that would have required a conditional use permit. We couldn't figure out how to make the findings to bring before you for a conditional use permit. Quite frankly, it's too close to the neighbors. So we through a lot of negotiation, we had the applicant remove that. They didn't at the time have a potential tenant. They didn't have any leases or any potential end user. They were just trying to get that land use approved, and we just couldn't evaluate it. So that was withdrawn from the application probably at the end of last year. I know the second submittal in January did not have a fast food drive-through on that parcel 3. So that's been removed. All of our information, public information, has had that removed. So I also would like to just put on the record that, Sean mentioned the letter from the law office of Donald Mooney. The comments about not meeting the criteria for a CEQA infill exemption are incorrect because it's predicated on the fact that that the project has a fast food drive-through use with speaker boxes, drive-through lanes. It alleges that we didn't require a masonry wall. Well, when the commercial project comes in on that pad, we'll be talking to the applicants about a masonry wall. But there's no project on that site, so there's ultimately we don't know how it's going to be designed, and we couldn't evaluate it. So noise, air quality, traffic, all of those issues associated with the fast food drive-through use aren't applicable to the project that's before you tonight. So we're very confident that a CEQA infill exemption, we meet the 5 criteria for a CEQA infill exemption, and that is the proper environmental clearance for this project. So I just wanted to make sure the comment about that, but originally it was on the project, and a lot of times the public doesn't see the process. Projects are, by the time they get to a hearing, design committee or planning commission, they've changed quite a bit. People don't always see that through the process, except for us, of course, and the applicant. But that was a pretty significant change to the project.
So just to clarify for the public, nothing's being approved on parcel 3 right now.
No, parcel 3
and it
will not
come
be
back to
developed
the
at
planning
this time.
commission as a
It will come
standalone
back
project in the future.
Possibly design committee, but most likely design or planning commission, just because of the proximity to the neighborhood and the great interest that I'm sure we'll have whenever something is proposed on that site.
Thank you.
Great, yes. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and, are there any other questions? I think those are some really good questions that got fleshed out. I'll now open the public comment period. So is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item, knowing that the parcel 3 is not part of the project?
Steve Plaskett, Roseville resident. The concern is that the traffic study doesn't take into account the traffic that may come through Camino Real Way. It did the driveways and the road on Fittyment as well as Pleasant Grove, but there was no study for what impacts traffic has on our private road. Now, we're concerned with the increase in retail theft, that all it's going to take is one person going through our development and hitting a child on a bike or a skateboard or chasing a ball in the street or something like that. There has been mitigation by a speed bump and a sign, but seriously, how's that going to prevent someone from speeding through our development, or employees, vendors, or customers using our development driveway when there's traffic backed up at the other driveways around CVS and the grocery outlet? We feel that there should be something more done to protect our private road that they don't have a right to cross, rather than a speed bump or a sign. There needs to be something more to protect the residents and to keep people from using our parking spaces to visit that shopping center. And that's what I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Staff, I know in your report you kind of addressed the issue. Could you kind of expand on this comment? It sounds like there might be some responsibility of the HOA for that.
So what we've discovered through all the research is the easement on the road, the name of
Camino Real Way.
Camino Real Way. The easement requires the commercial developer to allow those residents to access his property for egress. So they're allowed to go through the commercial site to get into their residential subdivision and to exit their residential subdivision. So that is what the easements all require. The easements do not allow non-residents to enter into the residential development. So the commercial developer has to allow the residents to access that site. So the thing that we've talked about or folks have brought up is a gate.
Mm-hmm.
But the gate would be to the benefit of the homeowners association. The developer and it would or whatever, the gate would have to maintain ingress and egress into the residential neighborhood. So it would have to be constructed and maintained for the benefit of the homeowners association. And so there's really no nexus to have the commercial developer build a gate and maintain a gate, because he wouldn't have any rights to use that gate.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're talking about how would you would you have fobs, and what happens if a key fob broke? Is that the commercial developer has to has 100 homes calling him about their key fobs? The gate breaks down. The gate breaks down and he doesn't fix it for 5 days. We've talked to the homeowners. We've talked to Steve, the homeowners association president, and if a gate was really the solution, a gate would have to be placed somewhere on the Paseo del Norte property and constructed and maintained by the homeowners association, because it is to the benefit of the homeowners association.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Since the easement is only one way, what could stop the property owners from somewhere down the line going and putting up a wall across that?
Which property owner?
The HOA.
Right.
Say they decided, you know what, we don't care if there's a gate. We're just going to put a wall up.
That's true, and that came up in a couple of the neighborhood meetings. To be honest, that comment was made in a couple of neighborhood meetings, and there are several of the neighbors that indicated that they use that to exit and to ingress and egress their homes. So I guess if the neighborhood association,
there's also an
There's
emergency
fire.
vehicle access.
Yeah, fire access.
Well, and I don't want to get to that point yet, because I got some follow-up questions on that piece as well. But we're looking at a project today with driveway locations and everything else that assumes that that's going to stay open, but it's their property. Would there be any city action other than the emergency vehicle that would preclude them from saying, we're going to wall this off because we've got too many people going down our private road?
I don't believe so. I think as long as they were able to accommodate emergency access in whatever fashion,
So if they had,
could limit.
at the end of one of those dead-end roads, they put a little teeny gate or something that we've seen in other residential
Alerts.
subdivisions.
Yeah,
That's
you-
basically for fire response
Yeah.
when they need to come in and out.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Could you put bollards up to eliminate vehicular access, but then the fire department could get through the bollards, have emergency access through the bollards.
So,
but that would be. I mean, we wouldn't participate. If the homeowners association desired to do that, they would have to work with our emergency responders to figure out what the best way to do that would be. And yeah, they can limit. They could limit that on their own.
So I'm going to ask a third question, because this is interesting. So let's assume that as part of this discussion that's going through with the developer, the HOA had consensus within the HOA that, you know what, that extra access point that goes through the commercial isn't as important to us as making sure that our subdivision is secure from all the other traffic. And they said, that's what we wanted, would like to see it just walled off across there with an emergency access out to Pleasant Grove. Could that have been considered as part of the project? Would the planning staff consider that as part of, would there be any issues with that consideration?
If the developer proposed it, I mean, we would look at it, but
Well, I don't know. I guess that would be a legal question. I don't know if the developer has the legal ability to wall that connection off.
But if the HOA said, as a mitigation.
Relinquished all their rights to the
Because they've got that little temporary turnaround in the other easement that goes through. If the HOA said, hey, you know what, that's not as important to us, because it seems like we've got an issue right now that the developer independently can't solve on his own without the HOA in some way agreeing to some kind of consideration in going forward. Absent that, you're stuck with what's being proposed here today. So I'm just trying to understand what's happened prior to this and what options were maybe considered or discarded and for what reason those were discarded.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about all of those possibilities. I mean, internally, it's at staff, we talked about every possibility.
I'm sure you did.
And, you know, without, you know, and again, I'm way out over my skis on this. I don't know what it takes for the homeowners association to relinquish their easement rights. I mean, I don't know
either. I don't know if it requires a unanimous approval or if the HOA as a whole could have a vote to do that. That's out of my realm.
And so I think, you know, obviously we have the parcel 3 that's going to come down the road someday. You know, if there was something that could be worked out, you know, we would. I don't think staff. I don't know that. Again, as long as our emergency services departments were satisfied.
So
I don't know that we would.
So what you're maybe implying, and I'm not meaning to put words in your mouth, is that if this went forward as it is today, and parcel 3 came forward in the future, and it showed that there was a significant issue, and there was a solution that could potentially resolve that by maybe walling it off and creating a secondary access, that's something that could be evaluated with parcel 3. And I'm not suggesting we punt that down the road,
but I'm
just.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, just to echo that, I mean, what you're proposing would be an arrangement amongst the parties and absolutely the parties are free to make that arrangement. And then that would be considered, if proposed, as part of the application, assuming there wasn't another, like I said, we know the EV is we have to maintain that EV access. That's our concern from the city standpoint.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, looking at this from just the layman's perspective, it would have been ideal if there was a solution that was like that both parties came to, and then it was just an issue of cost.
Yep.
And, you know, at that point, maybe the developer's saying, you know, to put a wall across here is worth it to me to secure this whole site and go forward, and we don't have this issue. But absent an HOA saying that's specifically what we would like to see, it kind of makes it very difficult to go in that direction. So I'm just trying to understand it. That was it.
Okay, great. Would you like to make another comment again?
Certainly.
Steve? All right, thank you. If you could state your name again, please.
Steve Plaskett.
Thank you.
The easement can be modified, but it can only be done if both parties agree to the modification. So the HOA could go forward with an attorney restating the easement, modifying it, but if Bollinger doesn't agree to it, then it stays as it is. The other problem is that when the title search was done for our homes, this easement was not brought forward. So we had no idea that this easement existed. And to the degree that it restricted our use for the public utility easement as well as the emergency vehicle access easement that comes with it. So the developer never talked to us about installing a wall. That was our residents who brought that to his attention, and he dismissed it. And he was unwilling to do any sort of gate or bollards or anything else. And it doesn't have to be a key fob for the gate. It could just be the call box there at the entrance where you press in your code like there's dozens of others in the city. So that's the end of my statement also.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
So if it wasn't a gate and it's completely walled off, is that something that the HOA would be open to? Or does it need to be a gate at that location that allows, that basically maintains the easement as it is?
The Board of Directors polled 52 of the 99 residences. There's 25 that are rental units where the owners don't live here and that we contacted by email and didn't really get a response from. So some people want it left open with access to go in and out because they use that quite often. And at the west end of the development, that's the closest ingress and egress for everyone there. So in answer to your question, the majority says, yes, close it off. And then there's a smaller minority that says, no, don't do that.
Are you familiar enough with the HOA's guidelines? Would a majority be able to make a decision for the HOA as a whole? Or would it require unanimous vote? Or
No, it would require a majority plus one.
Okay.
In order for it to go through, according to the attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Okay, are there any other questions? Oh, yes. Thank you.
It's Jati Plaskett, and I live in the Paseo del Norte complex. Everything that you've said has been brought to the attention of the people who were at the meetings, and everything you've said are our concerns. One of our biggest concerns has always been whether or not people would start using Paseo del Norte just to get away from the traffic that's on Pleasant Grove and Fittyment. Leaving from either side, I've tried many times going out, trying to find the best way without making U-turns, left turns, and it's very challenging. It's gotten worse over the past few years. We've been a resident there for 5 years. It's gotten worse over those past 5 years, going out onto Pleasant Grove and turning left, and going out on Fittyment and making you return to go south. The problem that I've seen from the beginning with this development of Paseo del Norte and the commercial complex is it was approved in 2006 when very little of West Roseville was developed. It was modified in 2013, still when West Roseville wasn't built out, so the traffic was very much lighter. Nowhere, as far as I can tell from talking to residents, was anybody informed of what was going to happen with the commercial property, or that could not be closed off in any way, because as far as we know, this is what it is now. It can't be closed off because we get to leave that way. A majority of us are happy to have that closed off, not everyone, but that would be up to a vote and done the way that it needs to be done through the HOA. But all this time, it would have been wonderful for the people buying in the complex to know that this was a possibility of not being closed off. If the HOA knew this, they could have from the beginning in 2006 and in 2013 when the second section was built, to know that this was a possibility so that the HOA could have been providing for this possibility, either by building their own wall, either by gating it off. We haven't had the opportunity to do that. Like I say, we've lived in the complex for 5 years. In 5 years, we haven't known about this. We found out about this in February when we got the notices. So suddenly we're faced with the possibility of maybe being able to put a wall up, but having no finances to do that. The developer's not interested in doing that. You're talking about a 99-unit complex to come up with who knows how much money to block it off. I know that nothing can be done about that now, but it's really unreasonable to me that we have to come up with this money without knowing that we could have been providing for it all along at the point whenever the commercial property was developed. 2006, 2013, we haven't known this. And this is really distressing to me as part of your development plan and how things are supposed to be going so well. I have no complaints about grocery outlet and the complex and that commercial property being developed. The problem is this community has no opportunities anywhere along the way to plan for the future, and that's very disconcerting. There are multiple homeowners that say when this happens, when the commercial goes in, the property is developed, they're going to move. which is really distressing. It's a very nice community. It's a lovely place to live, and it's very distressing. As I said, Mr. Jensen, everything that you said are all things that we've brought up, and we have not really been satisfied with the answers. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussions? Questions? Yeah.
I guess since we were talking about the wall, the concern I have with that is emergency access. If there were to be a fire on one of those properties on the west side of the community, as it currently stands, then they would have to go down to wherever on the east side the entrance is and get the fire trucks in, and with the density that you're talking about with parking and all of that, I see that being a pretty difficult thing. Am I understanding that correctly?
There's two entrances. There's Paseo del Norte Drive, and then there's the second driveway, Camino Real, which exits by Escaton. So the
Okay.
fire department already makes the U-turn where the gull wing's going to be installed to go down to Escaton because there's no other way to get to Escaton coming from Station 5. So I don't see what difference it would make if the fire department had to make the U-turn, go down to Paseo del Norte and come in on Camino Real to go either east or west in order to get to their call.
Just to add a little point, just to understand that EV access, it's not so much to get to the site, it's also to get out, is my understanding. So at that very end, if you're in, I'm looking at the map here, lot 1, 2, 3, or 4, which is adjacent to the commercial site, absent that second way out, if there was a major incident that was happening to that would be the east, they would be trapped in that location. They wouldn't be able to get out there unless there was an access point that went straight out to Pleasant Grove.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's one reason we have the temporary
This
roundabout or cul-de-sac at the end is so that the fire trucks coming down there, they can turn their trucks around and they're not in a situation where they have to back up or they have adequate turning radius.
They need a hammerhead as an option to that, and obviously that's not going to work with the dimensions. So, yeah.
And that's one thing a wall would preclude.
Right.
Depending on how the wall was built. There's an easement that's there today.
True.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions, John?
Could I ask a question of staff, please?
Yes.
We're in the public comment period right now, and so we haven't technically closed the public comment period, so I can see members of the public still wanting to talk. So I would only ask the commission if we could get through the public comment and then focus on the commission questions. That way everyone has an opportunity to speak before there's that kind of robust discussion, which I think just helps keep it a little bit streamlined. Thanks.
Yes, my name is Patty Brown. My concerns are, and I've been familiar with sound walls, is that they do create your property values to go way down. Bringing in that type of business will lower the property values of the people that live there, as well as those lower paying jobs that are going to go in there without benefits. So I don't see where it's going to serve the community well by bringing that in. Not only the element that it's going to allow, because we have speed limit signs all over the place, but they don't go by that. So putting a sign up says residents only is not going to stop them. So I think it's going to be a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other people who would like to speak tonight? Okay, so then I will close the public comment period, and then let's go ahead and ask some questions of staff. Commissioners, go ahead. Commissioner Pryor.
I have a question about the easement. How long has that easement been in place? Do we know?
Since 2006.
The temporary emergency turnaround easement, since the subdivision was approved in 2006.
Okay. So the HOA have known about the easement since 2006?
I'm not going to.
I think the
I'm sorry.
Public comments.
Easement,
I'm sorry.
fine.
I'm sorry, Steve. Public comments over, so we can't.
the easement was recorded between the developer of the Paseo del Norte and the developer of the commercial site, so the HOA wasn't in existence at the time, and so they didn't know about it at the time, but it was recorded, so they could have had access to it.
On all the maps, yeah.
So it has been recorded and has been public knowledge?
Yes.
Okay.
And because of the temporary nature, it did have the provision that once the commercial site, because the commercial site had the ability for those folks to access through it, that the turnaround, the temporary emergency turnaround easement expires, it goes away, and then the easement rights through the commercial site for the Paseo del Norte residents takes over. So they have the easement, the ability to drive through the commercial properties to either Fitment or Pleasant Grove.
Okay. And the second part is the site has been zoned commercial, community commercial since 1997.
Yes.
And that's been public knowledge and publicly available information to all HOAs and residents associations and realtors.
Anyone with access to the city hall planning documents or the websites or any sort of that public information like that.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. I just want to get clear. The easement was properly recorded in 2006 or whatever the date was, so that if a title search was done, it would be shown, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's where we got the information, yes.
Report that's required for all commercial projects, so.
Okay. I was a little confused because of people saying they didn't know that this was there. But if it was, I just wanted to clarify that it was publicly available. Okay.
Any other
Can
questions?
I ask just a couple clear?
Yeah.
So the public hearing it's closed now at this point, or so
Public hearing
we're
is closed.
staff.
Correct, yes.
Looking at the project, the uses are not an issue for me at all. I think those have been planned and everything going forward. So my concern is that interface between the two uses and how to protect the residents. And I know we've talked about a wall, and I'm trying to brainstorm in my mind, were there any other options? Was there an option considered that didn't put a wall there, but basically built a little teeny cul-de-sac at the end of that easement portion that allowed for a fire truck to continue to make that turn? You didn't have to put a wall. You're putting a little bit more pavement out there in a curb and gutter. It provides access for the folks that live there. They may want to walk down the street and walk across the little sidewalk that goes in there. It still cuts off that whole access through the commercial site. But my issue goes back to, we're approving a site plan right now that if the residents decide they're going to put that wall up, does that create some issues for anything going in the future? And so I'd hate to punt on it if there's a solution there. Does my comment make sense?
If you were to put a wall, you would need an area the size of that temporary turnaround on the Paseo del Norte.
I'm not saying you put a wall.
Put in a cul-de-sac at the end.
If you put just a curb and gutter and made a little cul-de-sac bulb right there at the end that precludes anybody from going down into that area, it stops the traffic.
I don't.
And I
I
apologize.
was going to
for
say,
being-
looking at the site plan, I think what you would do is you'd have to completely redesign the parking area in front of the shops building, because they have those parking stalls and that exit from the parking lot into the drive aisle. And that's just off the top of my head. It looks like that entire parking lot would have to be redesigned, because I don't know that there's enough depth for a turnaround.
You'd probably also lose some of the developable acreage of parcel 3
Correct.
as well by putting in a cul-de-sac. And I think one of the things.
Could I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sorry.
Instead of a cul-de-sac, you could do a hammerhead, which would minimize any type of, radius cul-de-sac. That would barely break into, it wouldn't affect parcel 3 building, and it would shift some of the parking stalls, obviously.
But the other side of this is we as a commission can't approve a condition that's going to require
the HOA to
HOA
vote on something.
do something with this project. That's why it's unfortunate that we're in this position right now.
To be honest, I think the probably the least expensive and easiest and quickest and without redesigning anything would be bollards. Would be movable bollards that the fire department would be willing to, whatever design that required, would be willing to accept, because then you wouldn't have to redesign any of the parking areas. You would just have these permanent barriers.
So brainstorming here, if the commission chose to add a condition that, subject to approval of the HOA, bollards would be placed along that perimeter that meets the fire requirements, that could be considered part of the project?
Be maintained by the HOA.
And I'm looking to the attorney as to the legality of doing that.
Well, and where I'm waffling is, it is a condition, but obviously we don't have the benefit of having the applicant, the developer here today and if I understand you correctly, if we make it a condition of approval, that cost of that condition would land on the applicant to build the bollards.
But we do have a representative, the developer here. If he chooses not to be here to address that, that's, in my mind, a force on him.
That's true. You're right on that. So, I mean, the Planning Commission has authority to add conditions to the project, reasonable conditions to the project. I think where I would be concerned, and I don't want to speak for staff, is whether staff is comfortable supporting the project
I get that. It'd be nice if we had fire here to ask them that specific question. If we put this condition on there, is that going to be okay with you?
And so that would be my hesitation, is simply that I think there is a component of internal city review that I don't know could happen. So I would be nervous from the city side with being able to actually comply with the condition. I wouldn't.
And I would hate to put the city in the middle of this discussion if the HOA says yes and the developer says yes, and then the city comes back and says no, because from a fire perspective, it doesn't work. Right. Now we're in the middle and we're the bad guy on this.
I would imagine bollards versus, you eliminate the need for a speed bump and you replace that with bollards, and then quite honestly, you eliminate the need for signage as well. Bollards would replace both. So I
think from a cost perspective, it would be it's a non-issue.
Right?
It's a non-issue there. It's more the emergency access, and I'm sensitive what Commissioner Higgins has been saying regarding that, and also what the HOA's desire would be as well.
Yeah, and we have. I mean, honestly, Commissioner Jensen, we've talked about that, and just there's just no certainty for us that the HOA, what their decision would be if they decide to close that off. It's all predicated on that decision. I mean, if they wanted to close it off, they could go, bore
the cost to them, and that's what's
right.
Precludes
bore a couple bollards.
Where a bollard coming in may, take the issue away for an hour. Maybe the easement's modified to say that's going to go in, and if the residents somewhere down the line decide they don't like it, the bollards could come back out. I don't know. I'm just trying to explore and see if there's some other options that are available.
I mean, I don't know how long it would take. I don't know how long it would take to negotiate all this.
I don't either.
Well,
maybe to that end too, and I'm not putting anything. I'm just trying to address your concern and maybe think through kind of the solution that might address what you're proposing. Because one other thing that, from a legal perspective, what I heard from the HOA is that they have some members who want free access from that spot.
Yes.
So it sounds like there would still need to be some vote at the HOA level before you could even get to the point of doing bollards.
And if there was a condition that was crafted, there would have to be a date certain that the HOA puts in writing exactly whether that's agreeable or not. And if not, then it goes forward.
And what I was thinking along those lines is, and I don't know what staff feels, but a condition that isn't imposing the bollards today, but perhaps requires the project applicant and the HOA to talk about bollards before the parcel 3 development moves forward, so that there's that opportunity for that discussion. And then
I like that.
Something like that, I don't know how that staff feels, but something along the lines of a condition that the developer and I don't know. I'm just
so that I don't want to throw cold water on this, but a condition. Once the project's approved and all the building permits are issued, the conditions are done. So, I mean, I think it's something. Personally, I think it's something that no matter what happens, unless a solution is arrived at beforehand, that when parcel 3 comes in, we're going to be talking about this again. Or somebody will be talking about it again, depending on how long it takes for that parcel to become viable.
Yeah, I'd like, if we go forward with the
yeah.
project as it is today, I'd like to see some mechanism that memorializes this discussion.
I mean,
or as that.
We have the conditions in.
To the parcel map?
The parcel map? Well, once the parcel map's recorded, then the conditions don't exist anymore. I think if you, the condition we have, and I need to lean on Sean and Derek on this, the condition we have regarding the signage and the speed bump. If there was some language in there that said, it's required to have signage and a speed bump, whatever that is, and if the HOA, the Paseo del Norte HOA, relinquishes their access rights through the commercial site in lieu of a speed hump and signage, the developer will install bollards. And that could be, I think you would have to put a date certain on that, because again, the developer is going to be in for improvement plans and building permits, so they're.
Understood. Before you get to that step, are you comfortable that fire would be acceptable to bollards?
I don't know. I mean,
I'd
we'd
hate
have
to
to
do that.
put that caveat in there.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to put the city in the middle if fire comes back and says that doesn't work.
I know.
I'm pretty sure we have city improvement standards that for those type of accesses, right, where we have bollards.
Right. Yeah, no, bollards are unacceptable for if it's emergency vehicle access only.
I'm pretty certain that the applicant could design bollards that would meet city standards.
One more thing, and I apologize for being such a pest on this one. I almost forgot where I was going to go. Now, the Bollingers own parcels 1, 2, and 3, correct? Would there be anything that would preclude a condition of approval that says that the applicant is required to enter into an agreement with the city that upon development of parcel 3, they may be required, the city may require bollards as to be constructed at that location? That way it takes it out of the conditions of approval. It's a separate agreement that goes forward. It allows it to be evaluated with parcel 3, and it allows staff the tents to check with the fire department to make sure that it's okay.
If we do an agreement like that, do we have to go to council? How would that agreement?
I think that would be done at the staff level, but I don't know if you're right, the council. What we're contemplating is whether or not an agreement like that would necessitate council approval, or whether that can be done at the staff level.
Because to me, that would be the cleanest. It allows staff the full chance to evaluate what works for fire department, works for everything else, allows the HOA some time to have a discussion about what may work for them. If there's no consensus from the HOA, and if it doesn't work from fire perspective, it's kind of off the table, but.
Yeah. What about a condition of approval that simply requires us to evaluate the access at the time of approval of parcel 3 as a condition of approving parcel 3 on our end?
Aren't we going to do that?
So that will at least force the conversation.
I mean, you can. I don't know how we put a condition on a development application that requires us to comply with a condition after the project is approved and built and constructed and occupied and 5 years down the road. I mean, I honestly, I honestly think that if the HOA thought that they could get the legal mechanism to abandon their rights to that easement, that the developer would be fine with putting bollards in instead of the speed bump and the signage as soon as possible. And I don't know that it would take us that long to evaluate. I know Matt mentioned that
Well,
bollards.
then maybe that's the best option, is to put that condition the way you stated it earlier.
That in lieu of signage and a speed hump,
The HOA would by a date certain.
If the HOA relinquishes their easement rights by a date certain,
Well, let me ask this, does it need to be a date certain? Let's say that the HOA somewhere, because we talked about they could go put a wall up potentially anytime they want. So does there need to be a date certain? It just says, should the HOA relinquish the rights to the easement, the developer shall place bollards at that location?
I think there has to be a date certain, candidly, in order to, depending on who bears the cost of the bollards. If the intent is to have the developer bear the cost of the bollards, I think there would have to be a date certain, because practically there'd be no enforcement mechanism if that occurred well after the project site developed out. There would be nothing to hold over in that regard.
So could the date certain be 5 years out of if they put a deferred improvement agreement or something? It's not a public improvement, so I don't know that would work. But
Well, wait, so in that instance, it would just be open for all access. There would be no, because we wouldn't.
It would be completely open from day one. And then if the HOA decides that it's an issue for them and they're willing to abandon that easement, then the developer's on the hook to come put the bollards in place at that location. But give, a 5-year window or something.
I kind of think what was proposed earlier, which is, the way I understood it perhaps is like an either or, right? So right now what's proposed is the speed bump, the signage. There's obviously costs associated with the speed bump and the signage. The idea is that, in a perfect world, the cost of the speed bump and the signage becomes a wash with the cost of the bollards,
Yes.
assuming that the HOA votes to put the bollards, right? So, I almost wonder if what perhaps is a better approach is to have a condition of approval to approve the project as is, or to approve the project with bollards should these conditions occur by pick a date certain, but that date certain would have to be close enough in time that the developer realizes the cost savings between the speed bump and the signage.
And perhaps the date certain is
Issuance of something.
some amount of days prior to an occupancy permit. So that allows, because obviously they've got site prep work to do, underground work to do, the building construction.
I'm open to listening to a condition that.
Occupancy, you're already spending money on doing all the.
No, yes.
Yeah.
Right. But that gives the two,
I
that gives the developer a long time before he has to build any speed hump or signage. Gives them quite a while, many months, and then it gives the HOA that amount of time to figure it out.
I'm feeling somewhat good with that, staff can draft a condition in that manner that does that, with the understanding that if parcel 3 comes in, we're going to get another second bite of the apple if things weren't working well.
Right,
But again,
that's
this is, I'm just throwing this out. I don't know what the commission's view on this is, if this is an issue for them or if they're comfortable moving forward. But I'd be interested in hearing a condition drafted if the consensus of the commission is that's somewhere we should go.
Commissioner Hagen-Jones.
So I guess I kind of want to address what you have just brought forward, and depending upon how the condition would be drafted, I would want to consider it. But I'm kind of struggling with, the developer is really not asking us to do anything or make any kind of substantial change to what is to occur on this property. There's no request for zoning change or land use change or anything like that. They are trying to put and develop on this land opportunities that are within the purview of this design. And I see them trying to accommodate the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors with all of this and saying, well, this is what we're willing to do at our cost to try to address those concerns. It may not be what the neighbors would really like in a perfect world for their interests, but at the same time, what they're trying to do is force a developer to somehow change what is an acceptable use on this property. And so I'm struggling with that whole concept where when a developer relies upon how something is zoned and the land use and the design guidelines and all of the things that are in place, and then to suddenly say, well, the people who live next door really don't want this, so we've got to change what's going on. That's a road that's not the best to go down in terms of good planning.
I agree with you.
You know,
I agree with you
so,
100%.
And so part of what I'm saying is, yeah, I'm open to consider a condition that you're
cost neutral.
throwing out there
It's cost
with this, but just I wanted to voice the concern I'm having in
I
my
agree
head.
with you 100%. I do. And if that could be structured in a way that allows the developer something that's somewhat cost neutral, but addresses the issues that the neighbors have, understanding that we're going to have an issue going down when parcel 3 comes up somewhere down the line, that this commission may not be the same group here, but I'm sure it's going to be brought up by the staff and the staff report when parcel 3 comes forward, this discussion that happened. So I'd be interested in hearing a condition that staff could maybe work with the attorney and see if the commission is comfortable with that. And if it is, then maybe we could consider adding that condition.
Could I ask the chair, maybe could we take a 5-minute break and let us go in this other room and put our heads together and come back with something, maybe?
Yeah, let's do a 5-minute recess, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question before you break? You mentioned that the conditions are only enforceable up to a certain time. How much time would that be from?
Well, so once occupancy permits are issued, so you go through and there's a whole variety of permits that are going to be issued. But once occupancy permits are issued, the developer, then they have full use of their site. That we sign off on all of the building permits, the site plan permits, the occupancy permits.
But that's at least a year out from.
Probably, yes. Most likely,
closer to
yes.
a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah, most
from
likely,
over.
yes.
Right. So
occupancy is probably, I don't know how fast it's going to take them to build it, but 18 months?
18 weeks, we can just build a facility.
But that's the grocery outlet. We also have the.
Right, the shop buildings.
Improvements and everything else, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, occupancy is the furthest permit out. Once occupancy is issued, the city's, the public hearings.
I'm sorry.
And it would be final occupancy of either of the two buildings. And, well, I don't know, that might be a long time because the shops building, there's no tenants.
Right.
So an occupancy permit may not be granted for that for,
Full occupancy, yeah.
I don't know when. So that's kind of throws a wrinkle into what we're thinking. My thought is that there's an option for ballers.
I think that's a great alternative. I think it addresses Commissioner Hagen-Joe's concern about equity and making sure that there's fairness going forward, because he's right. The developer bought this property understanding what exists there today and is working within those constraints. But if there's an option that's cost neutral that can appease the neighbors and they can work that out, I think we as commissions would not be doing our job in providing that flexibility to allow that to occur.
Yes, Commissioner Pratt.
Before you go into your recess, I just want to make another comment on Commissioner Hagen-Joseph's comment earlier. You said that it wouldn't be fair to the developer, but this isn't an ordinary situation because here we have an easement where the residents are allowed ingress and egress from the developer's site, whereas the developer is not allowed access and egress from the development. So it's kind of it's not an equitable situation to start off with, and we have this situation of a one-sided easement. So,
well, I'd be very interested in hearing how a condition could be structured that would kind of talk about what I think the commission has voiced.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the commission is interested in providing an opportunity for the homeowners association to relinquish providing them an opportunity to do whatever legally is necessary to relinquish their access rights onto the commercial site. And if they do that, then in lieu of the signage and a speed bump, the developer would place bollards to prevent vehicles, except for emergency vehicles, from driving from the commercial site into Paseo del Norte.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we need to figure out is.
I would imagine ongoing costs would have to be borne by the HOA, though.
Well, are there? I don't know
Otherwise,
what
it won't be cost neutral.
Are there ongoing costs with bollards? I don't know.
What are you looking at for bollards? Are we talking, if it's for emergency vehicles, that kind of thing, the removable? So just the arms, locking
They fall
arms,
down, I
fold-
think. Yeah, fold down.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the cost
There'd be maintenance
of it would
costs with
be.
signage and speed humps as well. so.
Yeah.
Installed something very similar at
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I know we do have the applicant's representative here. I mean, and I don't know if they believe that the costs would be, I don't know if a couple, and I don't know how many bollards, 2 bollards, one in the middle of each drive aisle, is that?
Probably talking 2 or 3 at the most.
2 or 3?
2 or 3 at least, yeah.
I mean, it takes some design.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're going to have to curb there. It looks like there's a pretty big opening there, and so 2 or 3 may not be enough to close off the area.
So if I could, from a procedural standpoint, so Greg kind of articulated the general framework of what we're hearing as far as staff goes with kind of the general idea. If everyone's okay with that, we don't need to vote on the item yet, but we can take a general consensus whether there's a majority who wants us to look at that, and then we can take a 5-minute recess and do that. So if there's a majority who's interested in us exploring that and, you know, taking this little brief recess, you know, we can do just a quick thumbs up, thumbs down for
Sure,
kind of
let's-
now.
Just a quick nod, if everybody's in agreement of that, yeah.
That'll work.
Okay.
Okay, so
Let's
that
go ahead
way,
and take a
and then we
5-minute
can go take a
adjournment.
5-minute recess
Yeah,
and.
and then we'll just all right, so a 5-minute recess. All right, we are back in session. Staff had some time to develop a possible expansion or revision of an item. Do we have any consensus or?
We have some ideas, and I'm going to let Joe kind of talk about a conceptually.
So what we're proposing is to address, obviously, the commission's concerns with regard to allowing this flexibility for the bollards as a condition, but understanding that for the bollards to be viable, there has to be action on the part of the HOA, and there has to be action on the part of the developer, and then there also needs to be, approval from the city side to make sure all of that works out. So there's these kind of unknown factors. So what we were proposing is allowing the flexibility to keep the project moving forward, but with the ability to change without needing to come back to the Planning Commission. So the idea would be something along the lines of, if you look at the conditions of approval, condition 10A deals with that signage that would be notifying individuals that it's the private property at the end of the property, end of the project, and then condition 28, which deals with the installation of the speed bump. So those are the two things that wouldn't need to be built if the bollards are built, and that would be where we would anticipate a realization or a cost savings by the developer, so that there's a net, no cost. So the idea would be, what we were proposing is approval of the project with all the conditions that are in here now, but with a new condition that says, if the parties talk and the HOA relinquishes its right to the easement and votes to block off with bollards which are acceptable to the city, and the developer is willing to build those bollards, then the project would be approved with that condition, and condition 10 and 28 would fall away, and then there wouldn't be a need to come back to the Planning Commission. So what it would essentially be is a further opportunity for the two parties to have a discussion amongst themselves and assume that all those other conditions play out while keeping it moving and not needing to come back here or sending it forward where there's a point of no return. So and we proposed having a cutoff date for that be at the time of the the site improvement?
Site improvement permit.
Yeah, the site improvement permit. That way there's a date certain that allows all the parties to kind of be working towards without getting to a point of no return from the developer side or from the HOA side.
Just for clarification, it would be, the trigger would be at acceptance of site improvements.
Yeah. Acceptance of site improvements would be, if it hasn't occurred by that point, the conditions as it proposed right now exist. And then, if by that point they're able to work out something that includes bollards that meet the city standards and there's a relinquishment of the easement, then the project would be approved with that in lieu of the speed bump and the signage, which wouldn't then be necessary.
Okay.
That sounds perfect.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It makes sense, yeah. Is everybody understanding?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask, for the public's understanding, how long, or typically how long till that
That's a good
site
question.
improvements?
Yeah, so, well, Matt, do you want to go ahead and try?
I mean, it depends on how long they take to build the site, but those can construct in, say, 3 months. But then the plans are currently in for review, and that's about a 3-month process as well.
So anywhere from like a 3 to 8 month period, is a rough estimate.
Seems about
just to
right.
give an idea.
So once the project plans are approved, they would start construction of all the site improvements. That's the underground work, the grading, right, the pavement of the parking, storm drain improvements,
Correct.
all of those kind of things. So that's all happening while, also the building construction is underway as well.
Correct.
So
Yep.
things can still be happening while the overall site improvements are being done.
I think that's a reasonable timeframe. I think that puts both parties in the game to try and make this happen. It's not just relying on, it's not the Bollingers, the HOA also has to participate as well. So I like that.
Okay. Okay, that's great.
Can I
Yeah.
read something just to, let me, hang on, I'm sorry, apologize.
Scribing down as we were talking, so he's.
So this is my first shot, but based on what Joe said, something along the lines of, if the applicant and the homeowners association of the Paseo del Norte community agree to replace conditions 10A and 28 with the installation of emergency access bollards, if the applicant and the homeowners association of Del Paso del Norte agree, I got this wrong, agree to install emergency access bollards, conditions 10A and 28 no longer apply. And then this condition is predicated on the Paseo del Norte Homeowners Association relinquishing the existing access easement rights across the commercial development on North Roseville specific plan lot 44, WW40, something along those lines. So they agree to install emergency access bollards, and then that agreement replaces the need to put in the speed hump and the signage. And then making sure that it's very clear for both the applicant and the homeowners association that we have to have some legal
Joy has to-
relinquishment of the easement and the rights of that easement. So we can work on the actual details, but
Yeah. So that's the overall condition, which gives that flexibility. And so I know we're not in the public comment piece, but I would ask to make sure that the HOA understands that condition, if we're being clear on that, because I don't want to craft a condition that I find out is unreachable because of something on your end, like a policy or a practice.
You're aware of the change in the
Come up to the mic first
Yeah, just come
before.
on up to the.
Okay. Steve Plaskett. You're aware in the civil code governing the HOA elections and the process that takes, it's about 3 to 4 months for that to occur.
For you to have your vote of your members.
Right, because it has to be done by a disinterested third party who has to configure the ballot, get the wording, mail it out to all the homeowners, and then there has to be a 60-day period for the homeowners to return the ballots for them to be tabulated.
So if we're talking 3 months for permitting and then 3 months minimum for construction, we've got 6 months. So that timeline might work.
Consistent. Yeah. It would be tight, but
That's
it would be.
that's only for the vote. That's not for the attorney then restructuring the easement to give up our right, which will be another, it's got to go to Bollinger's attorneys, who then have to make changes or edit it, and then it comes back to our attorney, which is another 6 to 8 months.
I would disagree with that timeline from a legal perspective, but I don't know your attorney's timelines. But that doesn't seem reasonable to me to take 8 months to modify an easement or to relinquish an easement. But I don't know your attorney, but that would seem an exorbitant amount of time in my professional standpoint.
Because there's more to it than the easement than just going across the commercial property for ingress and egress. There's also the driveways of the 7 units. There are reciprocal easements of 10 feet for us onto his property and 10 feet onto our property, which we have to maintain because those are the driveways for the last 7 houses.
And but you're only relinquishing a portion of the easement is what you're saying. So.
Yeah, there would have to be some. I guess what we're getting at with the relinquishment of the easement is relinquishing that right to access through the center, right? We understand that there may still be some aspect of the easement that's necessary for the homes on the end, and the placement of the ballers would have to still allow those homes at the very end there to access. But there would still need to be the understanding that the right to go back and forward between the neighborhood and the new project, that would have to be relinquished.
Right. So I'm not sure that we have to relinquish the easement in order to put the bollards in to allow the emergency access, that an easement has to be given up.
Well, I think from our perspective, otherwise, I don't think it's feasible to have then the residents unlocking the ballers and raising and lowering every day to go back and forward. And I think at some point there needs to be finality from the developer's standpoint.
And Chair Martin, I would like to interject here. We're starting to renegotiate.
We're not negotiating at this point. So
without Mr. Bollinger here,
their legal
we're getting
staff,
into
but we're just looking at the option to look at this because.
You can hash these things out, and if it doesn't come by the site approval timeline
in the 6 months,
then it's done. But we want to make sure that conceptually that's something that
conceptually it is, yes. And the members that we've polled have supported doing that, giving up the easement. Some have not, but the majority has.
So conceptually, that was my question. So I think
thank you, Steve. So it sounds like we have an agreement that there's a possibility for it to occur. So I think we can move forward.
And it's really the condition is a requirement for the applicant to talk to the homeowners association.
Yes.
And if ultimately that doesn't come to fruition, then that doesn't come to fruition. We still have the backup conditions.
Yep.
Well, to reach that, we have the pre-approval without needing to come back to Planning Commission for that.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And we still have parcel 3 someday if that
Can I ask just one follow-up question? I think this is great. If the applicant says, yeah, I got this condition, I just don't want to do it.
Appeal the condition.
Well, I mean, but from staff's perspective, is there anything that says the applicant shall use his best efforts to work with that, to replace that condition with the new condition, subject to the HOA relinquishing? Something that says they use their best efforts, rather than just say, here's an alternative condition. If you choose to do this one, we're going to take these other ones. What's the incentive to make sure that they use their best efforts to try to make that happen?
And one of the reasons we came up with the applicant and the HOA working together on this, without continuing this project for another month or more, to be honest, is that we don't know. You know, we were when we were discussing this language, the concept of having bollards on a piece of property in a drive aisle, the liability of that.
I think that clearly has to be discussed.
And so and that could just be a non-starter from that. That's why we put the language that, yes, and I don't know the best efforts. I mean, I guess if the landowner looked at this and his insurance company said, "Oh my God, that's a liability exposure,"
I get it.
He might drop that idea right then and there.
But that gets more into the weeds too. So let's.
And that's to negotiate in good faith.
Correct.
You know.
Yeah, negotiating in good faith is perfect. That's better than best effort. I like that.
I think we can put that language in there. Yeah. And then that doesn't. Yeah. And then that allows him to look at this objectively, and there may be reasons that we haven't thought of here tonight.
Correct, because I think what the commission is trying to do is just figure out a way that's not adding significant new burdens to the applicant, that he bought into a property that's there, but tries to address the concerns of the residents. I think this gets us there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a question, Commissioner Higgins?
No, I'm good.
So should we have that reread, Greg?
So I think we're going to say something along the lines of the applicant and I'm really making stuff up now. The applicant and the Paseo del Norte Homeowners Association shall agree to negotiate in good faith in order to replace conditions 10A and 28, maybe in parentheses, signage and the speed bump, with installation of emergency access bollards. So they'll negotiate in good faith to install emergency access bollards, which will replace the condition for the signage and the speed hump. And then that negotiation is contingent, or ultimately, the installation of the bollards is contingent upon the homeowners association relinquishing the access easement rights through the commercial property. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I care about the access easements on those two little side streets, that the 10 feet and 10 feet, but it's the easement through the commercial property on parcel WW40, and so.
Subject to city.
And then somewhere in there we would put subject to city review and approval of the bollard locations.
What I'm hearing is we're not going to hear the final language for the condition, but generally that's what it's going to be, and put in the final conditions.
If you want to give me 5 more minutes, maybe.
I'm okay with if the attorney's okay with us in concept.
If we have those parameters, we can fine tune it, but that'll be what the terms of it are, and then all of that is
the timeline
before the exactly before the site.
And
acceptance.
again, if the applicant is not happy with what the language is, they can appeal that condition to the council as it goes forward. Got it.
Are commissioners understanding of that? Okay. Okay. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at this point. And then would anyone like to?
I didn't know that was open.
Well, we have public comment. It was closed a while ago. I'm sorry. We had asked him a question regarding the legal matters.
In fairness, it would be to also make sure that the applicant is well advised or understands as well. I mean, we did do it.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that clear what we're proposing from the applicant standpoint? I know you're the.
I'm going to speak as the tenant that is having a timeline.
Can you please stand at the?
State your name again, please.
But nothing we're
Monica-
proposing should impact your timeline.
Thank you. So that's my only concern. We have an obligation to report, and we are trying to just build and open a store. We're hiring people. So all this timeline, my only concern is not to extend it and conditions
It
not
is
to
a site
impose.
improvement, which shouldn't impact your
Correct.
timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And is that clear from the applicant standpoint, what we're, okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think, just to be clear, the construction on all the site work would be going on, and that's what this would be tied to. Also, at the same time, work could be going on the individual pad buildings themselves,
Correct.
the major anchor, and also the other tenant buildings. So those could actually receive occupancy.
Right, upon substantial completion of the
So-
site work, but prior to acceptance of the site work.
So there shouldn't be an issue with the timing.
Great, thank you for the clarification. Sorry. With that, then, we are going to close the public hearing, and would anybody like to make a motion on this project? It's complicated.
I'll give it a shot since I've been the problem child all night. I move the Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of fact and approve the design review permit subject to 82 conditions as discussed at the hearing, and adopt the 3 findings of fact and approve the tentative parcel map subject to 48 conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Great. Commissioner Jensen has made the motion, and Commissioner Hagan-Jost has seconded the motion. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jensen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Covington.
Yes.
Commissioner Hagen-Jost.
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor.
Yes.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes. The motion's approved. There was a 10-day appeal period for this item. Thank you, everyone, for the discussions on that item.
Working tomorrow?
Took a while.
Item on the agenda is Commissioner Staff Reports. Are there any reports from staff?
Yeah, just really quickly, on May 3rd, the city council considered the zoning ordinance amendments, the update, the little cleanup that we brought before you in February, and they approved those zoning ordinance amendments. The only other thing I will quickly point out is that the Baseline Marketplace project at the corner, northwest corner of Fitment and Baseline, we had an application for a Costco commercial building, and we approved that at the staff level early in May. So Costco is working on their improvement plans, and hopefully they'll get moving along here shortly. I think they're planning on being open before the holidays in 2024.
Was that location again? You said?
Northwest corner of Fitment and Baseline. It's actually, the Costco is a little further west than the intersection, so it's just west of Upland.
So just for the residents that may still be watching, Matt, that includes the widening of Fitment and Baseline. That whole intersection of Fitment and Baseline is going to be completely widened out and finished off along that piece, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? That's it? All right. Great. Okay. Great meeting tonight. We had some good stuff. I'm looking forward to that Costco project. I'm sure everybody else is too. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Pryor's made a motion, and Commissioner Covington has seconded the motion. All of those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.